Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new episode of Stories from Space podcast, where your host, Matthew Williams, examines the history of human spaceflight, the breakthroughs that revolutionized our understanding of the universe and our place in it, and the brave individuals who work tirelessly to advance the frontiers of our understanding. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
The authors acknowledge that this podcast was recorded on the traditional, unceded lands of the Lekwungen peoples. Hello, and welcome back to Stories from Space. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today we have a very special guest, the physicist, author, and NASA technologist, Les Johnson. He is, in addition to other things, an elected member of the International Academy of Astronautics, a fellow of the British Interplanetary Society, and a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. He's also the co-founder of the Interstellar Research Group, and, as I understand, until recently, the chief technologist at the NASA George C. Marshall Space Flight Center, where you held that position for many years.
Well, I had the position for about 2 years. I've been at NASA for 35 years, as hard as it is for me to believe.
Yes. And also, you served as the manager for the Space Science Programs and Projects Office, the In-Space Propulsion Technology Project, and the Interstellar Propulsion Research Project. So naturally, the subject we will be discussing will be agriculture. Yes, obviously, we're going to be getting into interstellar travel, and in fact, the many, many things that you've written about it over the years. So first off, Les, thank you for joining us today, and, well, this is a big treat, and I hope my listeners are equally excited because, of course, well, your name is synonymous in many, many circles.
Synonymous with what? Hopefully not the wanted list.
No. But in terms of, yes, not only interstellar exploration and space exploration, but the advocacy thereof. And the listeners are not going to be able to see this, but I was able to fish out two books that you yourself are author or co-author of. The first is Going Interstellar, aka Build Starships Now, and the Ross 248 Project. I also have a copy of Living Off the Land in Space by you and Greg Matloff.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, yes, I was scouring my bookshelves, but I couldn't find it, but I probably moved it during the big hustle. In any case, this second volume here, the Ross 248 Project, I should note for the listeners, I had the honor of contributing to. The subject here was about building a new home for humanity around a nearby red dwarf sun. And the Ross 248 system is used as a hypothetical example. And my contribution was an essay on terraforming planets around red dwarfs. But yes, today we also want to talk about the latest volume that you, sir, have coming out.
Well, it's Interstellar Travel. You're talking about the technical monograph series. There are 3 volumes in that, and the third book is called After Arrival. And that'll be out, I think by early September, maybe even late August. I've forgotten. The publisher is an academic publisher. It's Elsevier. And their schedule moves things around. And the last I've heard is it's any week now. I think it'll be out.
Yes, August 29th, according to their website right now.
Excellent.
And yes, this in particular volume, the third in the volume there, I also had the honor of contributing to, once again on the subject of terraforming, but more broadly. So, less naturally, there's any number of places I would love to start, but I think the best thing would be, can you tell the listeners how you got into NASA, right? The road that brought you to all the prominent roles you occupied there for many, many years.
Well, I give credit to 2 things that happened before I was 12. One when I was 7, and that's my parents woke me up to watch Neil Armstrong land on the moon. I was born in earlier in the 60s, and I was a young boy when I was awakened and told I had to watch this. This is important, and I didn't really fully appreciate it at the time, but later on I did. And it's odd. I remember more about the TV set that we watched it on than I do the the landing itself. Black and white TV with blue sides. Um, but then a little bit later, I guess when I was about 12, my older sisters let me stay up with them late on a Friday night to watch reruns of Star Trek, the original series. And after that, man, I was hooked. I wanted to become a scientist, work for NASA, and work on building the Enterprise. So I had kind of as a single-minded focus all the way from middle school through, high school, college, graduate school. I want to work for NASA. And I'm getting ready to go to my high school reunion in East Kentucky. I've been trading messages with people. And the recurring theme from that is, oh, we knew you were going to do that when we were in high school with you. So it's been a dream of mine for a long time, and I feel really, really blessed to have been able to do that. That God gave me the gifts I have to be able to do the math and be involved in the scientific process and have the doors open so that I could do what I really had dreamed about since I was a child.
Yes. And as I understand it, your name did come up while I was doing a looky-loo there with the 100-year Starship project, and that is something that I've never actually talked about on this show. So, what was your involvement, A, and B? Can you give us a little blurb on what that was?
Sure. Well, it was the late 2000s. There was a lot of interest and activity in ultra deep space flight. I had been involved in an activity at NASA JPL looking at a successor mission to Voyager, where I was the lead for the propulsion system element concepts for technologies that would let us build a spacecraft that could leave the solar system 3 times faster than Voyager. So that was kind of a heady time there at JPL, and there were a lot of people looking at that, and people starting to think about that ultimate voyage, to a distant star. Well, at about that time, there was someone at DARPA whose name I don't recall, the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, who wanted to instill some kind of stretch goal for 100 years that would foster creation and innovation of technology, et cetera, and wanted to establish kind of a foundation to do that. And they actually put out a procurement, like honest to goodness government request for proposals went out, and I was not part of a team that responded. I didn't, because I was working at NASA, and I couldn't respond to something like that or even be a part of a team, because it was another government agency that basically said we don't want other government groups involved in this. We want this to be totally private. And several teams competed, and one team that was headed up by the astronaut Mae Jemison was selected, and she moved out and she established this 100-year Starship organization. They had some initial kickoff meetings, gathering the world's experts together in various places to discuss this. I had symposia, they had workshops, and it was after it began that they opened up the call for ideas to come in, and that's where I proposed some of my work on solar sail propulsion, laser sail propulsion, and different advanced propulsion technologies that could take us to the stars. And the next thing I knew, I was going to their meetings and talking to the experts and being among the folks that were thinking about that. And the 100-year Starship was very active for the better part of the decade of the 2010s. And it was in that time frame that a lot of other interstellar groups popped up that were not well funded by DARPA, mostly volunteer groups, like the Tau Zero Foundation, the Initiative for Interstellar Studies, and of course, the Interstellar Research Group, which I helped co-found. And all of that was kind of a feeder and in parallel to this interstellar advocacy, technology, innovation sphere that kind of sprang up around 100-year Starship.
And your book, A Traveler's Guide to the Stars, here is listed as part of their 2023 awards.
That's correct. Yep. They do. As one of their outreach efforts, they try to honor and have an award called the Canopus Award for various contributions to the interstellar field in the previous year. And in that year, I was just deeply honored. I didn't even know I'd been nominated until I got an email. I wasn't able to attend their meeting. It was in Africa, and I was unable to go to that particular meeting. And I found out that the book I wrote for Princeton University Press in late 2022, called A Traveler's Guide to the Stars, was selected as the Canopus Award winner for the best long form nonfiction book of the year related to interstellar travel and inspiration for deep space travel. So I was really thrilled. That's my books. I've won a couple of awards, but that's what's near and dear to me because it's really written by my peers, right? They're the ones who voted on this, and that means a lot. So I'm very pleased with that.
In fact, well, I'll be providing links to all the major publications here in the episode notes. But yes, this in particular, I haven't yet read this book or procured it, but it does look very, very interesting. And so basically, yes, this is something that, of course, you did in the works that I can speak to. Exploration of interstellar propulsion. So the bottom line is, at present, the only really viable means for sending missions to other stars, at least within a human lifetime, is directed energy propulsion.
Well, that is a hot debate. Still, I tend to be a proponent of that because I see a clearer pathway from where we are today in terms of the technology to where we need to be to actually mount what I would call a realistic interstellar voyage. In my book, A Traveler's Guide, I kind of lay out at a layman's level. It's written for the public what all those challenges are, and in there I define what I call a realistic interstellar voyage. Because right now, the Voyager probes, which are beyond the edge of the solar system, are going fast enough that they'll leave the sun and never come back. They've gotten solar system escape, and they will go the distance of Proxima Centauri if they were pointed in the right direction, which they're not. But if they were, they would reach it in about 70,000 years. So we're already launching our first probes to the stars, but I don't consider a 72,000 year flight time to be realistic. I mean, I think it'll happen, yes, but no, that's not what I mean. So I kind of ground rule realistic interstellar travel to be trip times of, a few hundred years, no more than 1,000 years. And I think, we don't have any capability to do that today. But the technologies needed for beamed energy, off-board directed energy sails, for instance, using lasers to shine off big solar sails, seems to be a clearer path than some of the alternatives. Among the alternatives are nuclear fusion, propelled spacecraft, antimatter propelled spacecraft, that kind of thing, which are physically doable, but I think the technical challenges to building them are a lot harder and would take longer for us to manage.
In fact, we had a chance to talk about this in a previous episode, which I titled "Going Interstellar," and let's see, that was the 25th episode of this show, which is really, really quite interesting. We are now up to 108.
Excellent.
If I put this one in the queue directly behind the web naming controversy, yeah, 108. Wow. And yes, and this takes me back also. After the 8th Interstellar Symposium, we had a chance to talk about this stuff as well. So, have there been many developments since that day? It was really only 2 years ago, but are we any closer? Have there been any developmental milestones since then that would suggest?
Well, actually, unfortunately, I think we've kind of regressed. 2 years ago, we were still holding expectation that the privately funded Breakthrough Starshot initiative, which was funded by philanthropists in Silicon Valley that was looking at using high energy lasers and very small sails with very small instruments. It was an idea conceived by Dr. Phil Lubin at UC Santa Barbara. So I have to give credit for the intellectual credit where it's due. It was Phil's idea and got picked up by 100-Year Starship. But the 100-Year Starship program and project, i.e. funding to try to make that happen, looked like it was going to go, and then it was put on hold. And my understanding is they haven't said it's officially canceled, and that I may have missed it if they did, but the last I heard was that the whole project was on hold. And you combine that with the fact that the solar sail work that I was working on in my day job at NASA That sail was supposed to fly this year, but there were some technical problems, not with the sail, but with the spacecraft that caused that project to be stood down. And it looks like now, at best, the soonest that something like that will fly from NASA would be 2029. So if I had to tell you, Matt, I think we've actually stalled, unfortunately.
Yes.
I wish I could come in and tell your listeners, hey, man, we're on our way to the stars, but I think we stalled.
Yes. Now, in your time at NASA there, I assume you crossed paths with Harold Sonny White and the NASA Eagle Works.
I have.
Now,
I know Sonny fairly well. Yeah, I sure do.
yes. So yeah, he is, I should say he was then at NASA and now through the private sector pursuing the big long shot idea, right? The idea of warp nacelles and Alcubierre metrics. So just how, I feel I know what the answer is going to be here, but do you think that that is something that could hold promise for humanity someday?
Someday is pretty wide open, Matt.
Indeed,
I
indeed.
like someday questions. You know, almost anything you can think of that's not physically impossible could happen someday.
Mhm.
But that's the issue for me with the whole warp metric. I am not
Mhm.
a general relativist expert on Einstein's general relativity and the whole notion of being able to do the modeling of other folks with regard to what that means. But my educated layperson in that field opinion is based on my understanding of the fundamental physics requirements, and the math all works for a warp bubble. And it was pioneered by a fellow named Alcubierre, a physicist, and it makes a lot of sense, except it requires the existence of something we've never observed, which is called negative mass. And so in the universe, as we observe anything that we see that's physical, it has gravity and it has positive mass, and that means it's an attractive force. Negative mass would be something that's got mass, but it's a repulsive force. We haven't found that. But if we do, then the Enterprise warp drive is ours.
Yes.
So we just have to figure out if that can be real in nature. And if it can, it sure looks like the math works out to allow us to create these warp bubbles and actually warp space-time to travel relative to the frame we're in now faster than the speed of light, which would be amazing.
Mhm. And I remember reading negative mass would also give us the ability to do artificial gravity.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
you know, carrying things. It would be like in Star Trek, right, where they have the grav offloaders. It's kind of a negative mass kind of device there. It kind of shields against gravity. I think it would change everything. I mean,
oh
getting from
yes.
the Earth to space would change. How we travel would change. Where we live would change. It would be a complete societal disruptor and game changer if we were to find that, which is great. I think a lot of benefits could come from that.
Absolutely, yeah. Interesting to know that, yes, if we could just isolate this, all that stuff that we wish were true, but we kind of relegate to the science fiction bin, then yeah, suddenly it's possible. Boy. So to get to this latest compendium, this my
I
memory
call it a
loss. This
monograph. We call it
yes,
a three monograph series.
yes, and so they're all entitled Interstellar Travel, but they deal with different aspects of it. So yeah, can give us a brief rundown of what volumes 1 and 2 were about.
Well, I can do that. When I began the book, A Traveler's Guide to the Stars, it was never intended to be a technical book. In fact, the publisher, Princeton Press, for their popular science line, they didn't basically say, they explicitly said, don't put any math. People won't read it. You know, the average person who is not an expert and is looking in Barnes and Noble for a book to read about space exploration, if they see math, they're going to put it down. So I wrote the book for the person who's not necessarily mathematically oriented, but math oriented people could get something from it. But it caused me to think. I thought, well, wait a minute. In the field of interstellar travel, there have been lots of papers written on all the different aspects of it: power, propulsion, communications, life support, governance, cultural, philosophical, you know, all of those kind of things. But has it all been collected into a cogent format and volumes that could be used like in a senior level undergraduate or first year graduate student course at a university, where it's like a seminar class on all the stuff you have to do to go to the stars. So Ken Roy, a good friend of mine and an engineer from a nuclear engineer from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, who's been involved with me in a lot of this interstellar work that I've been doing, we proposed to the scientific publisher Elsevier, who does technical monographs, textbooks, that kind of thing, a 3-volume series that would contain peer-reviewed, technical, for the most part, papers that cogently lay out different aspects of interstellar travel so that it could be used by universities. It could be used by other people like me when I first got into this field as an early career NASA scientist to say, okay, what's the status of this field? Oh, okay, there's a book series. I'll go get this book series and I'll get up to speed on it. And that was the intent. So Ken and I used our network of people that we've met during our careers and in the interstellar field, and we've got an incredible lineup of the world's experts on these different topics and how they might be used or need to be developed to go to the stars. So there's 3 volumes. The first volume is basically purpose and motivations. Why do we want to go? What's the history of exploration? How hard is it going to be? What are the major challenges we have to overcome? And we have contributions by some A-listers. This is not all written by Ken and me. We just edited this and invited people to come in. We have an exoplanet astronomer, Dr. Angel Tanner. We have Pete Worden, former NASA Ames Research Center director, former general, who is the head of the Breakthrough Starshot and Breakthrough Listen. We've got Greg Matloff, who introduced me to the field with his seminal work, a Starflight Handbook. And others, Mason Peck, who is a professor at Cornell, used to be the NASA chief technologist, Giancarlo Genta, one of the pillars of European interstellar research, Rob Hampson, professor at Wake Forest in the medical school, talking about the biological aspects, and more. And it's just a great book. And that was followed up by volume 2, which is propulsion, life support, communications, all about the voyage. And there we continue talking about how do we communicate with Earth? What's the propulsion system? We have people come in who are experts in philosophy and sociology and the legal profession. What kind of governance, if it's a world ship, do you have? And then, of course, the third volume that you contributed to is all about what happens when you get there. There won't be an Earth 2.0. Just forget it. You're not going to have a Star Trek Class M planet that you conveniently find and you can breathe the air and eat the food and live there. It's just not going to happen. So we have to be prepared for either modifying the worlds we go to for us, modifying us for those worlds, or finding a way to live on the asteroids and moons of the solar system and artificial constructs. And that's where your whole terraforming expertise came into play. So we really appreciate you contributing.
Yes. Well, thank you for using the word expertise there. In fact, while previewing this episode in another one, I did use the term resident expert, but with irony and also the caveat that I didn't say that. I believe it was Fraser Cain who said that he was relaying that. But yeah, I was very honored to be designated as such. Yeah. Now, in terms of other contributors to this latest edition here, I'm very eager to get my hands on it because I definitely want to peruse what some of the other things that were explored. Now, Ken Roy, he's well known for his shell worlds concept, and that is part and parcel of terraforming there, right? It's build basically an enclosing structure around a planet so that you can make all these changes to its surface and its atmosphere, and then the shell comes off, or not.
Or not.
Depending.
I think most of what he talks about is a lower gravity world where it would never otherwise be able to keep its atmosphere. So he basically is creating an Earth 2.0 with a roof.
Yes.
And it's a really good idea because it's passively supported through pressure, atmospheric pressure, and the natural forces that it would encounter if it's engineered correctly. and give you a way to build up an atmosphere on an otherwise airless moon, which you have
Yes.
to have the low gravity in order to build the structure. So it's a really innovative idea for how we might do a different kind of terraforming.
Hmm. And also the other issues that are explored there, governance, communication. Right? We're not just talking about technology or, well, terraforming is a process, right? Not just ecological engineering or technology, but also social questions. And that's a big one, isn't it?
Well, it
Now,
is because the weak link for just about anything we humans do is us, right? The foibles, the differences of opinion, you have to look no further than our current political discourse to see that, right? And so what we need to do is we need to figure out the approaches that'll help keep a coherent, cogent group of people who may not be the original or not likely to be the original people who left, but it'll be their descendants who reach some of these planets to do the colony and settlement and to live there. And so I think it's vital. And I'm also of the opinion that interstellar travel, if it's ever going to happen, it's going to have the support of the whole human species, not just a bunch of scientists and engineers. That's why we need the sociologists, we need the lawyers, we need the philosophers, we need all the people to look at the aspects of what it means to have a human civilization. So to me, it all kind of rolls together in that last volume of, what do you do when you get there? How do you set up governance? What are the risks? Um, those kind of things. Really important.
yes. And I want to thank you for mentioning the generation aspect there because I was immediately reminded there, just seeing chapters there on governance and so forth. But similar work has been done regarding generation ships, right?
Hmm.
How do we ensure that all these settlers aboard this big ship there, that they're all breathing the same air and all sort of stuck together? How do we ensure that they don't kill each other or revert to or yes, the idea has been explored pretty well in science fiction, I think, too. It's like, yeah, what if they have some kind of Lord of the Flies scenario here and completely forget that they're on a ship, right? Time passes and they're just going along living in this self-contained world. Yeah. So yes, extending that further, that's a very interesting idea. How do they live
Well,
when they get there? And yeah, and can you plan for stuff like that?
I was brought to my attention some of this by a fellow named Mike Massa. And Mike Massa has a background of providing security for very wealthy clients. And he can't say who any of them are, and it's his previous life, right? He's got all these NDAs, but he was talking about the way that we voluntarily, you and me, voluntarily surrender some of our civil liberties for the good of those people around us under certain circumstances. And he gave the example of when you get on an international flight, right? You have certain rules you have to obey. When the pilot says sit down, you don't get up and assert your right of independence and say, I'm not sitting down. You sit down because there's turbulence coming, right?
Yeah.
And you voluntarily are searched before you get on the plane. Of course, it's not really voluntary. It's if you want to get on the plane, you have to be searched. But if you want to go, you do that. And that's not something that most of us in the West are just going to casually say, okay, whenever I go somewhere, you can search me to see if I've got a weapon. So there are things that we're going to have to consider for these world ships, and ultimately when we arrive, that we may not like. Those of us who have a bit of a libertarian streak, in terms of what we think about our rights as individuals, we may not like what we have to give up for some of these things, for the security of the trip, for sure. And it's an interesting exploration. And so we've had some people explore that. The governance chapter in volume 3 is not written by him, but someone else who looked at the issues of governance. And so anyway, it's a fascinating topic.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see it. And of course, there's the question of what if there's somebody there? Of course, yes, all things considered, there may very well be life there. When we say someone, at least in my case, I'm thinking, yeah, what if we encounter an advanced civilization there, or a civilization that's technologically dependent? So that is in there too. I'm getting more excited here. Can't wait to get my free copy. Yes.
Well, it's a
Fortunate
darn
that
good question. What do we do?
yes. Well, and so yeah, there are also chapters on analogs, right? So for lunar settlements and Mars settlements. Now, in the case of Mars, that's actually an issue. If we're going to be setting down there, putting down roots in Martian soil, what about possible life? And have you read Red Mars
I
by
have.
Kim? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Kim Stanley
Mm-hmm.
Robinson. Yeah,
Yep, I have.
and I thought what he said there was kind of last word stuff, right? We don't know if life is here. It could be deep underground, so we're not going to worry about us changing the surface, but those changes will trickle down. What is our moral responsibility? And yeah, that comes up in terraforming. It comes up in interstellar travel too. So yeah,
Well,
what are
my
your
personal opinion on that is I kind of go back to the Star Trek Prime Directive, and I
Mhm.
extend that to microbes personally. If we go to another living world, then we really shouldn't monkey with it.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of people would disagree with me, and the best argument I've ever heard in that respect is, well, yes, scientific knowledge is one thing we need to consider, but why would we let those decisions be made just on the basis of that, as opposed to economic or some other interests that also arise where there are going to be moral questions and practical and pragmatic questions? And I thought, well, you got a point. I'm a scientist, so I tend to think, science is high priority, but other people don't place the same priority on that. And they might place, economic development or resources higher on the list than that. So that's why we're going to have a debate about this topic. Personal opinion, it is unlikely that we're going to find life. I think life, based on what we see from in our own solar system and what we have not seen in the stars, is kind of indicative that the universe is probably mostly cold or hot and dead and inhospitable to life. And that's why we need to take life elsewhere, because if this Earth is as rare as I think it is, then I believe we have a moral obligation to protect the planet Earth. We're the cradle of life for us, and spread that life as far and wide as we can, because the universe otherwise is likely to be mostly empty and mostly dead. And I think life is good, and we need to spread it around.
that's yeah, very good summation. Life is good. And that has come up there too. I've heard that the moral imperative should be that yeah, where life does not exist, you should plant the seeds. And I've also heard it said that if we can enhance or yeah, again in the case of Mars, there, if we can sort of cultivate the biology that's there, the living species that actually are there, species that would have had a chance if Mars hadn't become so cold and irradiated, then why not do that? And I think that too. Interesting. Yes. Yes,
I
indeed.
think we should. I mean,
Yeah.
it just makes perfect sense, and it gives in the long term, not in the near term, in the long term, the Earth has been damaged and faced mass extinctions in its past. I read a great book called When Life Nearly Died, and it was about the
Mm-hmm.
Permian extinction, which happened before the one everyone talks about, which was the KT
Mm-hmm.
extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. This is the one that happened before the dinosaurs ruled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a volcanic event that in modern day Russia that spewed so much into the atmosphere that there was no sunshine for I don't remember, it may have been thousands of years. Acid rain changed the pH of the oceans, and 90% of all the species on Earth died. And when conditions improved, that 10% is what then repopulated the planet. So, those things happen. In about 5,000 years, from what I understand, North America is going to have a real problem when the Yellowstone supervolcano erupts.
Mm.
Even you Canadians will have a problem when that happens. And so North America is going to be a mess in about 5,000 years, which on a geologic time frame is nothing. Um, so, these things are going to happen that are totally out of our control, and they can have devastating impacts on life and civilization. And so having, this escape valve where we have a way to spread it and protect what's here, I think is essential.
Mhm. Backup locations, if you will.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
yeah. That is the buzzword that I've heard used pretty fairly often. And yes, I would quote Elon Musk on that back before he started saying just some very unquotable things. But yes, he's hardly alone in that respect there. In fact, Stephen Hawking was a big proponent of that too. Just the idea that, yeah, sooner or later something might come to get us. Oh, and of course, Robert Zubrin. Right. Yes, it's good to get out there and be able to see and even control where the asteroids go, because sooner or later one might hit Earth and kaboom, boom.
There you
Right.
kaboom, you're right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if we have enough notice, we can maybe do something to prevent that from happening. And maybe in 5,000 years, we'll be able to figure out how to turn off the Yellowstone supervolcano.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows, right? We got to prepare and we have to plan for all contingencies.
Yes. So, in terms of exoplanets, right? Given the huge explosion in candidates and confirmed ones that have happened there since Kepler, do you ever do you have any favorites? Do you think, oh, I'd really like to see that one, or my money's on this one being a good second home for humanity someday?
Well, I do, as a matter of fact. And Travis Taylor and I have written about that in our science fiction novel series that we call Saving Proxima. The second book
Hmm?
was Crisis at Proxima, and that's Proxima b. Now, this is not a planet circling the famous Alpha Centauri, which is a star that you can see if you live in the southern hemisphere. And by the way, I'm going to be a total nerd and tell you when I was in Australia, we went up into the Grampian Mountains on a cool, dry night. And one of the purposes of going was to look up and find the Southern Cross, a constellation you can't see in the northern hemisphere, and look at Alpha Centauri. Because I've been writing about it and reading about it my whole life, and I had never seen it because you can't see it if you live north of the equator. So we were in the southern hemisphere, and I had to take everybody in our group out and point it out. There's the target right there. But that's not what I'm talking about. There's another star. It's a red dwarf. It's a little
Okay.
closer to the Earth, Proxima Centauri. It's part of the Centauri system, and it has planets, and one of those is Proxima b, which looks like it's in the habitable zone, which means it's close enough that it could be liquid water, not necessarily frozen, not necessarily boiling. It looks like it's tide locked, unfortunately, which makes it a lot more complicated. But it's my favorite because it's close and it's in the habitable zone. And darn it, why not? Let's go.
Hmm. Yeah. In fact, yes, it is the closest rocky planet to the solar system, unless there's some rogue planets out there that we don't know about, I guess. But yeah, they come and go, don't they?
They do.
But
They do.
yeah, well, yeah, me too. Ever since they announced they made went public with the findings about it there in 2016, and I remember getting to report on that at the time, and it was so exciting. Oh, and I do hope it's not one of those eyeball planets, as we've been hearing about. It's just all icy. Yeah. Are there any others? Like, do you think Alpha
No, that's
Centauri
that's the
itself?
one that really leaps out at me. In the anthology series that you point out, Ross 248, we don't know much about it. We don't even know if it has planets because it's not aligned for us to be able to tell that from our vantage angle. But it might. It turns out that most extrasolar stars like our star, have planets. And so it could have some. And Ross 248 has the advantage, and I've forgotten how many tens of thousands of years, but in not too far in the future, it'll actually be closer to our star than Proxima Centauri. So I hope we don't need 30,000 years or whatever it is to be ready to go to an interstellar voyage. But if we do, then that'll be one that's even closer. And our descendants might have that as an option because there's bound to be planets in that star system.
Yeah. In fact, red dwarf suns, they're pretty good at making rocky planets. At least that's what the data seems to suggest. And yeah, I was surprised to see that. Of the 30 or so candidates, rocky planets that are near to the solar system, 28 are red dwarf systems. Whew. And you got to think that there's something going on there. They have a pretty good roll of the dice, those stars. So yes, in terms of, I mean, obviously we cannot possibly speculate about whether or not there would be life on Proxima B, but it being habitable, right? There is some, yeah. The debate
It could be.
is ongoing.
I mean, and that's why it was fun to play with in a science fiction story, because it's not beyond the stretch of imagination that it might be habitable, right? And that's great. A lot of these exoplanets, you look at them and you say, there's no way Earth life could survive there, or life could be there as we know it. But there are a few that look like they might be, maybe, depends on if the other rolls of the dice happen to favorably as to whether they're there or not, right?
Yes. I'm reminded that, in fact, I have a copy of Saving Proxima Centauri. It's just unfortunately in a pretty big pile. But yeah, I did start it. And of course, the premise is very grabby at first there. And so, yeah, the sequel. What was the name of the sequel?
Well, it's actually not a sequel. It's a 3-book series. And the second book is called Crisis at Proxima. And the third book, Travis and I are writing that right now, and it doesn't have a title yet. So I can't really tell you what it'll be called. We'll know that after we finish. And the publisher picks a title, because this may not be something that your audience knows, but a lot of books, the author doesn't select the title. That comes from the publishing house. They may have a title going in and something radically different comes out. I just read for the first time Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. And, he won all kinds of awards, Nobel Prize winning writer. And in the back of the book, they had a note that when he submitted it to the publisher, I think there were like 30 optional titles for that novel. And the one that was finally settled on was A Farewell to Arms. So you never know. And of course, I have high aspirations that our books will be on somebody's list with Hemingway someday, of course, which is very unlikely. But nonetheless, it's the publishers who pick that.
Wow. That was not encountered that yet. I hope I do someday. But yes. Okay. And I notice you have a copy of Saving Proxima Centauri right behind you, or Saving Proxima. And it's just visible in the background there. And
you're talking about the poster I have for it back there. Yep.
Yes.
I should have it closer in view, but nobody's going to see it on your audio podcast. But the publisher is really good to me. They send these placards so that when I go to book signings, I can put those on the table and have a big cover, and not just rely on the small, hardcover or whatever it is. And that's really nice. Get to get a few perks. They don't do much to publicize for the author, but when they send stuff like that to us, we make use of it.
Okay. Yeah, it does. I was just thinking there that's in the background there. That does look awfully large for paperback. Maybe it's a hardcover.
It'd be a massive paperback.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Super large
about,
print.
That's at least 2.5. It's at least 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet. Yep. It's pretty good size. Yep.
Well, I'm sure some people would find that especially large print accommodating.
You'd have to get way back from it to read it.
Yes. It'd be ridiculously thick, too. Okay. That has been a very weird thought experiment there. Okay. So, getting back to the interstellar travel. So, it will be, according to what I'm seeing just now here on their website, on the Elsevier publication website there, it is going to be coming out the 29th. That is a week from this Friday. And Well, yes. Hopefully the author copies are going to be coming around about the same time because that I myself am pretty interested to see what else is in there.
Well, you're supposed to
Uh,
get a copy. All of the lead
oh yeah.
authors, the contributed chapters, are supposed to get their copy. And I have to apologize to listeners. Being an academic book, it's considered like a textbook, which means unlike my other works, which are popular science and science fiction by mass market publishers, these are textbooks, which means they're going to be over $100 US each. And
Hmm.
that's kind of on the pricey side, but that's an academic press, right? That's what they run these days.
Yeah, and I would totally recommend to listeners if you're hoping for a sample, a preview of what that is, then I would definitely recommend checking out the books Going Interstellar, the Ross 248 Project, because I'm not sure if we even mentioned this. These are both scientific essays and science fiction stories. So it's very applied science and yeah, well, applied science fiction.
Well,
Science
that was the
applied to
intent.
science fiction.
We,
Mm-hmm.
we modeled it after things like Analog Magazine, which it used to be Astounding, the long-running magazine of science fiction, where they have mostly science fiction stories, but they have science fact articles in them. And so for the Going Interstellar anthology, Jack McDevitt, who's one of my favorite writers, by the way, if you haven't read works by Jack, you need to. He's just quite a visionary and creative writer, best-selling writer. We
Mm-hmm.
proposed original stories that we solicited from various authors, not just us, about interstellar travel, realistic interstellar travel. And then we did my list of people I know in the field to write popular science, nonfiction, accessible essays, kind of the science behind the fiction. And then the publisher, Baen Books, actually hired a professor to do a teacher's guide for the book and gave that away free in PDF. And so I've heard from a few schools where this book was actually brought into some high schools and was used in the literature class. They would read the stories, and oh, by the way, they had to learn a little science because they read the science behind the fiction. And then in the science classes, the kids would devour the science behind the fiction, and oh darn, they had to do some literary criticism and reading when they had to read the short stories. So it was really kind of perfect to do the cross-disciplinary, education thing with high school students.
Well, absolutely. And as someone who didn't really do science there as part of their education there, at least not at a university level, it's like it is really cool to study this, kids. To do it, especially if you're just doing it for yourself, right? They'll make you take it in school, and quite frankly, it's going to come up later. So please don't bother your teacher with questions of, oh, when am I going to use this? I mean, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. Of course, I'm kind of old school about education, and that is that the purpose of an education is to be knowledgeable about many things, not just an expert in your field.
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to say, I went on to get a graduate degree in physics, but my undergraduate is a BA. I have an Bachelor of Arts degree, and I was probably the only chief technologist at NASA, if I had to guess, that had a BA and not a BS. Because most of the chief technologists, went and got straight engineering undergraduate degrees before perhaps getting their master's or their PhD in engineering after that. But I went for a liberal arts degree and took all of the fields: sociology, psychology, philosophy, American literature, world history, all that, in addition to physics, which is my discipline of choice. And I loved it. It really helped me broaden my thinking. So I'm a big believer in a liberal arts education.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, it sounds like you've lived my dream. As- Although, yes, I didn't, I haven't pursued astrophysics or anything along that lines since school. I plan to go back. I want to at some point go back and get a degree in astronomy and or astrophysics because it's like, well, that's what I do now. But yeah, it was the same for me before: liberal arts and history, literature, and I think
It's
that's a
never too
very good thing
late.
to pair.
It's
Yes.
never too late, Matt. My wife and I just last spring completed a 2-year part-time course, and got our associate's degree in ministry. So
Really?
we're both Christians, and we decided we wanted to get more knowledgeable about our faith and understand more of the basis of it in a structured kind of way. And so we took a class with tests and term papers and everything else that we did 2 nights a week, 4 hours a night for 2 years, and got our associate's degrees. So it was a great experience being back in school. It's kind of hard to do while you're doing a full-time job and all the other stuff that I do, but it was worth every minute of it. And I'm a firm believer you can never stop learning. Don't ever hang it up. So if any of your listeners are saying, "Oh, I haven't, it's too late for me to change careers or to go do something," no, it's not. Just go do it if you can
Yes.
afford it. And I realize not everybody has the means to do that, but if you do and you want it, you can find the time.
And if you just want to learn about this stuff, you can do that too, right?
Absolutely.
Without having to pay for a formal education.
Yep.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes. Makes me miss teaching. But, this, I do not, I don't regret getting into writing, because that's been really, really cool. And I get to meet people like you. So,
Well, it's mutual, Matt. I've enjoyed our conversations and our correspondence, and I hope we cross paths again in the not too distant future.
well, yes. And I also hope for that too. I really hope that I can get out to an IRG symposium or a book launch or book signing. I mean, we've done a few of these now. I'd like to be there when they're actually being promoted and being talked about. And yes, and of course, well, this is now your second time on the show. Well, I look forward to a third.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored. It's been great,
Okay.
Matt. It's always good to talk to you. And like I say, I've enjoyed working with you. Your contributions to both of those works have been great. And one of the things that I think that you've learned and I've learned is that the field of terraforming is ripe for people to get into and do some creative new contributions. So if any of your listeners are technically minded, read some of Matt's stuff about terraforming, his blogs, the chapters for these books, and do a good Google Scholar search, and you'll find out that this field is wide open. And if you want to be the first to make a contribution in an important long-term space development field, I would say there's none as underdeveloped as terraforming right now.
Yes.
And
And
it'd be really important to get some bright minds in there to start working on those challenges.
yes, and it has applications here on Earth, where we are currently terraforming the planet, but in a very bad way.
You're exactly
Yes.
right. Yep, you're right.
Yes. And yeah. And there's smart money that says we are not going to solve the issues of climate change without doing active climate restoration and ecological engineering, basically trying to, yes, repair the damage we've already done. Well, and I look forward to our next topic of conversation, our next episode, because Lord knows there's so much to cover, really, between space flight, space exploration, interstellar exploration, terraforming, ecology, and how people are going to live. Boy, if ever you need someone to contribute to a volume about generation ships, yeah, I think I may have missed the bus on that one. Going Interstellar pretty much covers that, doesn't it?
A lot of it does, but there'll be other works that other folks are going to be doing, and you can bet that your chapter in Volume 3 of this monograph will get the attention of those folks when they do lit searches to find people to contribute. Your name will pop up.
Excellent. Oh, yes. Like popping up. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you for so much for coming on, and yes, I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Bye-bye.
And thank you to all my listeners for tuning in. And as I said, I'm going to be posting links to all the aforementioned books, including the Interstellar Monograph series, in the episode notes. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you for listening. I'm Matt Williams, and this has been Stories from Space.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stories from Space podcast with Matthew Williams. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.